Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, August 26th. I'm your host, Tom Moore. The Texas game in 4 days. The game against Michigan in 95 days. We'll be welcoming back in Justin Whitlatch and Ross Fulton to do some X's and O's breakdown today. Have them on the show. We are sponsored by Jeff Ruby's of Columbus, proudly offering nationally acclaimed USDA prime steaks, seafood and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. All right, so we got to talk about the Texas-Ohio State game. It is a little bit of a hot topic in Columbus and really around the nation this week. And these two teams, they just played back in January. In fact, Texas's last time on the football field was down in the Cotton Bowl against Ohio State. The Buckeyes have played one game since then. You may remember that one. It was in Atlanta. But man, that game in the Cotton Bowl was an absolute classic. But one of the big storylines from that game was that Texas was able to completely lock down Jeremiah Smith in a way that no one else was able to do last year. Just one catch for 3 yards. So, okay, question number one, how did they do that? So, going to welcome in Ross and Justin. Ross, let's start with you. Okay, how did Texas do that against Jeremiah Smith? Because no one else was able to do that last year.
Yeah, I mean, there's a combination of things. I mean, I think I could find a couple plays where early on, and particularly, I think Will Howard missed Smith. They had a nice design on the first series for a explosive play to Smith that Howard missed him. But, you know, I mean, the long and the short of it is Texas played a lot of cover two concepts or kept a deep safety over the top, in varying forms, and also got, I think, will show a lot of depth with their linebackers as well to try to get into intermediate passing lanes. They really were just playing like a pretty conservative, like we're going to keep a safety over the top. We're going to try to get our linebackers with a lot of depth. And so like Justin, hopefully grab some clips to show that. So like the first play, the Ohio State's in the low red zone and Texas is running basically cover zero, if you will. I mean, it's man across, but they keep a safety over the top. So you have Emeka Buckeye and Jeremiah Smith to the left side together. And that safety is basically just acting like a cover two safety, right? Like he's just keeping over the top. They run like a little slant shoot. And so he's just on top of Smith. And so that gives a one-on-one opportunity for Carnell Tate to the opposite side. And, it's no coincidence that Tate had a big game against Texas in response. Obviously one of the benefits Ohio State has is a pretty deep wide receiver core. They're going to be missing Emeka Buka, but still pretty talented. And obviously you had Max Clare in. So, take away one thing, but I think I would presume you're going to see a lot of similar from Texas to identify where 4 is and keep a safety over the top and get the linebacker depth in their drops as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Ross. I pulled a couple different clips, but the first one, like he was just talking about, is you've got to cover one look across the board, and then you've got looks like the field safety. That's going to be like the double 4 that you heard of the Patriots all the time. So that's pretty much one double 4. You have the boundary safety that's aligned up on the tight end. And a big reason I pulled this clip that Ross has already alluded to is you're going to be manned up across the board. And I know Day has talked about in the past, if we're going to get match cover or man-on-man coverage, somebody's got to win. And obviously here, Carnell Tate wins. But I think with the tight end room and having Max Clare, I think this would be a big opportunity for the tight ends to be one-on-one with that drop-down safety. There's a lot of room to work with the safety or the safety on the tight end. So I just think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for guys to win. They just got to win, and that's going to be the big point of emphasis this week.
Yeah, and so I mean, we can run you through like a host of clips showing similar concepts, right? So like Justin hopefully grabbed. The second one, it's 2nd and 20 after a holding call. So there's like, obviously Texas has the benefit of yardage to play with as well. But again, like a soft cover 2, you got 2 really deep safeties. Linebackers are getting a lot of depth. So it's an all curl or curl flat concept from Ohio State. So you got both the linebacker and the corner sitting on Smith, right, off his curl route. And so, Howard checks it down to G. Scott, which again, like I think to Justin's point, is another example of, there's going to be opportunities there for other guys if Texas uses this kind of scheme. And I think ideally for Ohio State, Max Clare adds sort of a different dimension at tight end compared to what Ohio State had last year to take advantage of some of that soft room in the middle.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And a big thing I saw with the film that was pretty consistent, if they're in zone coverage, he's going to be capped by a safety, whoever the boundary safety, field safety, because Texas's defense, they're a field and boundary defense, meaning they're going to flip guys to the field and guys to the boundary. So if they're going to be in zone coverage, they're going to cap him with a safety. And if they're going to be in man, typically they're going to be 1-4-4, and then you're going to be man across the board elsewhere. It's not a heavy pressure team. If they do pressure, they like to bring safe pressures, which we'll get to later. But it's going to be a lot of 4-man pressures. But he's going to be capped. So you got to figure out ways to get him the ball where he's just not sitting on the line of scrimmage. And I know Ross and I have talked about, I think this is a big week to move him around in motion to get him opportunities to get a free release off the line of scrimmage. You've got to be able to communicate defensively how you're going to cap him if he's going to move. And that, as a defensive coordinator, that's going to be really hard to do. So I think the more you move him back and forth across the formation or even stacking him, it's going to be really hard to cap him. So I think going into the game plan this week, I think Day needs to do a good job of formationing and giving him motions to where he's going to have a free release, and it's going to cause the defense to really communicate post-snap. Because they're going to be 19 to 22-year-olds. You got to get them to be able to communicate.
Yeah, I like the idea of bringing him in motion across the formation, almost like almost a wing right off the tight end. Kind of keep him covered, protected against easy to cap. And so then they're going to have to shift from if he's an outside receiver, you kind of have a cone and you can bracket a slot, but that's a lot of communication, as you're saying, to happen really quickly to switch from, okay, now we're going to have to totally change the type of bracket coverage we're playing. And
just think, too, if you're going to have to communicate for one guy, that's going to leave 3 other guys that, again, you've got to worry about and you've got a game plan for. So there's a lot of weapons to be had. It's going to be a really big week of how can I dictate matchups. And again, that's an NFL thing, I think, is you can formation and motion to get the matchup that you want. And I think it's that week for Ohio State to really get him on a good matchup. Sorry about the school bell there. To get him on a matchup. And then from there, if you can find some other space for Max Clare away from the motion, you kind of create some space to get him one-on-one opportunities for some deep shots. I just think there's a lot they can do. It's a lot to put in, obviously. But again, it's a good week to get him on the move.
And one thing you guys had talked about was, Ohio State obviously will use 12 personnel quite a bit. And we've heard Max Clare's name a bunch already on this show. He brings them that receiving threat at the tight end position. Will Kazmarek, they love Will Kazmarek as a blocker, and they view the blocking piece of the tight end position as a really key to making the running game go. So how does it change things for Texas when Ohio State starts showing 12 personnel on offense?
I pulled 2 different clips. I mean, the clip 18 that will show Texas did a couple different things to 12 personnel. Again, Ohio State's got a really deep room. You can take advantage of getting defenses pretty base in 12 because it's heavy. You either got to bring a heavier linebacker on the field or you've got to beefing up the front. And Texas, their base defense is a 2-4-5, so they're going to have 2 D tackles, 4 linebackers. Both their ends are outside linebacker body types, so they're more pass rushers, third down D ends, if that makes sense. And then they play with 5 DBs. So you got to determine on defense, do I want to be in a heavy nickel? Do I bring a third linebacker in? Or do I line up in more of a 3-man front where I walk up my outside backers and then I'm in a 52? And Texas showed both of those. And so on clip 18, it's a red zone clip, you'll see that they're aligned in a 3-4 defense. They bumped down both their D tackles into 3 techniques. So it almost looks like a bear front. You got a 5-man front with 2 backers in the box. That's one way that they took care of 12 personnel. And then they also will just bring in a heavier linebacker and play a 4-3 personnel into the box. So those are 2 different ways they've shown. You can take advantage of both of those ways. But that's kind of what they've shown last year.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, again, it's all about matchups. If you're going to play, again, Ohio State should take advantage, right? Of Clare, particularly as sort of like a big slot, if you will, and kind of, push Texas to see how they want to handle that. I presume Texas is going to probably treat him as a tight end until they proves that they don't have to. But, you can again see on one of the clips, Ohio State's in 12, right? And you're running but Texas is going to protect themselves by still playing like a Tampa, right? Or at least like a 2-4 sim pressure with some 2 deep safeties, and like they want to keep capped on Smith, and so that's giving you easy access throws to the outside, and so I think you'll see Ohio State use some 12 personnel to try to get Texas in heavier looks to throw the football.
I agree with that too. And if you look at the clip that we have, they're, again, like you said, they're in too high. And everybody knows if you're in too high, you're going to run the ball until they adjust. And then once you get in one high, you can also, again, take advantage of some shots. But you'll see in the clip here is that we were able to get in 12. They're staying in too high, and we're running split zone, and we're able to get movement up front. And you give the back just enough room, and he's off to the races. So there's a lot of different things you can do out of it. You can get a lot of the matchups that you talked about.
All right. And then one more thing that we had talked about is Texas and their use of sim pressure. And that's something that can create confusion up front. And it's a way to sort of be a little bit of a force maximizer where if you can't necessarily win straight up, you can sometimes create a mismatch, create a 2-on-1 kind of situation just by confusing the opposing team. So let's see some examples of Texas using sim pressure.
So Justin's talked about this a lot in our preview last week in terms of I think conceitedly they're on the road, so they don't have the benefit of the crowd noise they had somewhat last December or January, whatever it was. But they have obviously you're going to try to confuse a quarterback, and that's one of the benefits of sort of playing the 2-4-5 look that Justin was talking about. You can bring pressure from different guys, and you need to by necessity. And so this clip again, like you'll see Texas still keeping 2 deep safeties, and particularly to the side of Jeremiah Smith, like that boundary safety is bailing immediately, right? Like he's got 30 yards of depth. They're not going to let Jeremiah Smith get over the top of them, right? And so you're just trying to force the footballs elsewhere, and here they force in a tight window, but you'll see a lot from them, not just like man sim pressures, but a lot of zone pressures, keeping, as I said, like 2 deep, 4 under, right? So you're still bringing 5, but you kind of still have that cover 2 structure, cover 3, they'll roll the coverage. So again, I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on San as a new quarterback, offensive line gelling together to handle those, particularly when Ohio State gets behind the chain. So, I think it's kind of a truism, obviously, in general, but staying ahead of schedule will be important.
I 100% agree. And I like to focus more from the back end perspective of how you're going to protect that up front. And there's a couple of different schools of thought on how to protect it. And you'll see in the clip that we have here, Ohio State's in a half slide. So from the center, left guard, and left tackle, they're in a half slide. Okay, they've got a 3-on-4, if that makes sense, because Texas has a nose. Okay, they've got a 4-eye. They got a linebacker head up on the guard, and then they've got a DN or outside linebacker walked up as a 5. So one of those guys you have to give to the back, and I'm interested to see on if they're going to be able to communicate this on Saturday, because you've got a couple new guys up front, you've got a new quarterback. How are we going to communicate that? Are we just going to have one type of protection? So I'm interested to see what that protection is. I'm sure it's going to be half slide, but can we communicate of who we're going to half slide to? And when you half slide, you always want the furthest guy away from the ball to be the guy that we leave unblocked, either for your quarterback or for your running back. So they're keeping the back end of this protection. So they're going to leave the linebacker that they bring through the backside A for the back. And again, you've got a new back this year as well, 2 new backs. So it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to protect this, if they're going to be able to hold up against their Mike and their Will, whoever brings pressure. So away from the half slide, you're going to be man on man or big on big. So you got right guard here on your 3 tech, and then you've got your right tackle on the 5 tech who's a dropper. So anytime you're running a sim pressure or like a mugged up look like this, and you drop a guy that typically doesn't, you want to attack that side because they're not used to playing in space. And I think that's why Will Howard's eyes go here first, is he wants to be able to attack a DN that never really plays in space. So a lot of different ways to skin a cat, but I do think we'll get half slide, and I just want to see how we communicate.